Hey guys, hey Debbie, how you doing? Everybody's quiet. I can stand it if you can. Everybody's piling in. Hi, Father Sean. How are you, lad? We're getting close, Sean. 2 weeks. Saratoga. Hi, Jeannie. How you doing? I am smoking an Ernesto Carreras Brownstone. Local, recent find. Pretty good. He does the Devil's Hand. Isn't I think was one of their more popular ones, if I'm not mistaken. But good. Hi, Joe. How you doing? I would just mention right off the bat, I was a little quiet this week as far as presentations or posts, and the reason being is I just had a really monster week at work, and it was a good week to sort of take a step back because there wasn't a whole lot going on. So, hi Tyler, how's it going? So, those of you who are wondering, if Father Sean reached out to me and want to know it's okay, everything's fine. I just had a really busy week. It was just tough. It was tough enough just to get the full card out, uh, which we did, and we did okay. Well, all the scratches and all the mud and whatever that was, those days just sort of suck, because it basically throws a lot of your handicapping out the window. But we did okay. Linda, if you were on Linda Rice, you did great, and we did. In the second race, we got an 8-1 shot with Linda Rice right off the bat, and so that made for a decent enough day at the spa. Yeah, Joe, we have one of these things whenever there's a holiday, and Rhode Island is the only state in the union that celebrates victory over Japan Day, which was last Monday. So what they do is they give us the paid holiday, but then they say if you work 4 10-hour days, then you get an extra vacation day you can use later. It's called a float. So I did that. So I was up, and I worked nights, so I was up late 4 nights in a row. So it was real tough to get anything going, but we're never short staffed. We're overstaffed. There's never enough work for everybody, but luckily I've been there long enough that there is. So, but how's everybody doing? Everybody, how'd we do over the weekend? Yeah, they'll always find more work, won't they? How'd everybody do with the Christophe Clement? I didn't do any Del Mar over the weekend. It was just Saratoga. Oh yes, Robert. Yeah, Robert, that was a Well, I mean, we still don't know exactly what happened yet, but I'm pretty sure, you know, uh, pretty obvious. There was some chicanery going on there, without a doubt. We talked about this, I think, a while ago. Some of you guys asked about that, and what's interesting is that what I've always maintained is the bigger tracks, you're less liable to see these type of things happen because there's too much at stake, the purse money and all that. But um, just goes to show you it can happen anywhere. Um, I mean, well, Father Sean got to pick three. Yeah, the fair. I mean, uh, yeah, I know, Sean. I was just playing that. What was that? Wait a minute. Was this just the last race here? Race number 8. You're talking about with Short Man, I think it was, or no? Who was the Smiling Tiger? I saw it, and I thought of you immediately because we had talked about Smiling Tiger. I looked at him, I just couldn't get there. Smiling Jojo, number 6. Is there a? Is I'm just looking through here. But the nightcap. Okay. Hey, Jamie, how are you? Good to see you. JJ Gray horse race was very shady, West Virginia. I don't know about that one, Robert. Now I didn't see it. I'll just say that right off the bat. I didn't see the West Virginia Derby. Um, Mountaineers, anything's possible. That's the Wild West show. That place. I used to once in a very blue moon play Mountaineer on Monday nights just because it was Monday or Tuesday when there was no other racing. I just felt like playing. That you can throw handicapping out the window at that place. It's the Wild West show. Just you never know. It's not form fitting. Most races aren't. But again, it goes back to what we talk about with when you get to these nickel claimers, these really small claiming prices. It's all about who's in form, and sometimes it's hard to tell because particularly when they're these smaller tracks and these smaller claiming prices, those horses fall in and out of form very, very quickly. So you really don't know sometimes. And I tend to stay away from Mountaineer in particular for that reason. All right. So in the nightcap, Sean's saying number 11 on the turf, looks like, perhaps. Yes. Let me see. I haven't looked at this race, Sean, but I'm going to take a look here. 9. Oh, the 10th race. All right, and this is a maiden claimer for 12.5, Phillies Calbreds. Let's see. Oh, Southern Riff. Okay. Tell you what I'll do. I'm going to share the screen. I was tempted to play Evangeline, but couldn't find anything I liked. Smart move, Joe. Smart move. How many times have I said that? If you can't find anything, don't play a race. Well, the thing is, Robert, when some of these states are not part of HISA, like Louisiana and Texas, so they can run with Lasix in these races. I believe that's the way. I didn't. Again, I haven't seen it. I didn't look at it. I shouldn't say anything, but that would be to me, if a horse is running with Lasix and his prior efforts without it have been either disappointing, or when you look and you see a horse is doing okay, without Lasix. But with Lasix, he was better. If he's switching back, the chances are he's in pretty good form. He's going to be okay. Hey, Nina, how are you? Oh, thanks. That's my Keeneland hat. I wanted to put Hardspun to rest for a little while. Just do something different. Um, okay, I'm just looking at the last race at Del Mar, number 11, Southern Riff. Well, first of all, Monty Meyer is the train. I'm gonna share the screen so we can take a look here. Okay, now this is the last race at Del Mar, and Father Sean has pointed out that one of my favorite sires, Smiling Tiger, who is deceased, has a horse, and this is a maiden 12-5 at Del Mar for Philly Calbred, 3-year-olds, I believe. So just looking at this horse, see if I can get it a little bigger for you guys. Anybody use this new PDF, Adobe Acrobat? It sucks. It's not nearly as good as the old one. Anyway, so he's by Smiling Tiger, which we like, and we see he costs $9,000 and his stud fee is $7,500. So those, wasn't totally awful, but pretty bad. And we look over and you see the dam, no 2-year-olds won, had 2 starters with a winner. And it's by Southern Drawl, nice name for a dam by Curlin. So we'll look at the work tab. And big red flag to me, and I'll show you, I'll highlight this so you can see it. Make it a better color so you can. Now you see that work tab? Now, you note his last race was June 27th. And they gave him the customary 2 weeks off. So he got to work on the 11th at San Luis Rey. And it was a gate work. And he's already had 5 starts, and they put him back in the gate. So that's a little bit of a red flag. The next thing is the next work with hand urging to get 48-4. Okay, that's all right. But then look, there's a 2-week gap, and he doesn't work again until August 8th. So that right off the bat, that's a bit of a red flag. So when I'm looking at long shots, that's not something I want to see. So I look, he debuted at Santa Anita in a maiden claimer for 20, and he didn't run at all. And a couple of the horses are back in this race. So that's, and it's been 5 starts and a couple are still in this race. So you got a lot of horses who haven't had a lot of starts without a win. Second race, really no improvement at all. He was a little better on the front end. You see that 76, 64, 76 as opposed to the first start where he was just dead out of the gate. So they gave him some time off from March to May, and now they debut him at 2 turns at Santa Anita, and really not much better. So they cut him back. Now you've got the route to sprint angle. Now that's a positive because I love that when they cut horses back, but no effect. He didn't do anything in that race. Past tired rivals, that's nothing. And you see one more at Los Al on the 27th at 6 furlongs in the same class, and he ran even worse. So that's a pass for me on I didn't I didn't add it. Okay, there it is. Now you can see it. You see that little highlighted pink there? That's to indicate that the gap in the work tab. So, Sean, I would pass. I wouldn't. I wouldn't bother with. I don't like to pass on Smiling Tigers. There was one in the last race at Del Mar, but I just couldn't get there. But if you see a Smiling Tiger with a little bit of form, he's one to consider. No, Jamie, no way. I wouldn't either. Can't do it. Yeah, so I mean, so yeah, this you guys looked any deeper into this championship series for the 3-year-olds? They're not done yet. Don't be surprised if you see Pimlico move the Preakness to after the Belmont. Then what happens? I think they're going to do it because they're in no man's land right now, even though it's 3 weeks after the Derby and on Sunday. It still won't line up right for the championship series. So I just wonder if you go Derby, Belmont, Preakness, then you can keep the Triple Crown intact and still have the Thoroughbred Championship Series. They're thinking about putting it on the 4th of July. I can't remember the last West Virginia Derby I ever watched, to be quite honest with you. I can't remember it used to have a little more renown because of the purse size was like 500,000 if I recall right. So you every once in a while would get some decent enough runners, but now it's just it always was kind of a JV race and it still is. Not one that I get excited about playing. How'd we do in the Christophe Clement? Did anybody play it? I really liked what I. I agree. Hey, and I happened to notice, Jamie, you had some nice stats there. Good for you with the app. She did. Linda Rice had 5 winners yesterday. And you heard Carson talk about last week. Good, Sean. Oh, you Pacific? All right. I'll tell you what. It just so happens, Joe asks, I like Sweet Azteca too, Mr. Hill. I like that horse too. Jamie had Minaret Station. You know what? He showed me a lot. I've always really liked that horse, except I didn't bet him. And the reason was he's the cavalry. He's always too late. But he showed another dimension in that race, being more forwardly placed. And if you recall, the fractions, they were just crawling up front. It was like 52 and like 118. But I thought it was to me, it was to Minaret Station's credit that he ran closer to the pace this time. So he's handier than I thought he was. Ancient Egypt, just as a little aside, that something that happens on occasion with European horses, and we've talked about it a little bit. If you watch races in Europe, like at Royal Ascot or England or just in general, you see on the turf, what they do is they run in a pack, really usually pretty tight together. And a lot of the horses, particularly the more prominent ones, will run to the inside on the rail. And to save as much ground as they possibly can. And what happens is when they come around the turn and they get to the top of the stretch, they all fan out and it becomes a sprint, like for the last 3-4 furlongs. The technique is called covering up. And I can tell you, when I started following horse racing, that was something a lot of times they would bring up about European riders who don't know how to ride in the U.S. And there's a big difference between U.S. and European turf riding. And Ancient Egypt was a prime example of a jockey who doesn't know how to ride in the U.S. Because in that race, he did have a little trouble breaking, Sean, that's true. But he was covered up and he had nowhere to go. He couldn't get free. And by the time he was free, I don't think he had enough in the tank to win the race. But it just showed it was a classic example of he needed to be right on old Crazy Bones' ass the whole way. And he just didn't get there. And I think they were overconfident. I think they thought, we'll just outkick him in the end. And you saw what Servi had. I thought that was incredibly impressive when you consider how slow they were going. And she just had tons and tons in the tank. But yeah, Ancient Egypt was my pick for the race. But I ended up, I did throw in, I got to pick 3 out of it. But yeah, it was it was a great example of Euro jockey not knowing how to ride over here. I thought. Let's see. Anyone watch that first start of Flightline yesterday? Inshal, yeah, she's pretty good. She's pretty good. You are right, sir. It was. I agree completely. It was not a good ride at all. And I'm trying to find my ubiquitous CSJ. I apologize. I have forgotten your name. It's good to see you again. Is it Stuart? Tell me what your name is. And I'm sorry. I feel terrible when I can't remember people's names, but senior moment. It was a terrible ride, though. You're absolutely right. Paul. I'm sorry, Paul. Thank you. It seems to be the consensus is that the flight lines are going to need more ground. And, I had one that I was kind of high on, Ariel Affair, who ran at Saratoga. I think it was on Belmont Day. And broke terribly out of the gate and put this mad flourish in late, kind of like Golden Tempo. Got up for third. I said, I'll bet that horse back. Well, they put him on the lead, and he couldn't sustain it. I wonder if he's a horse who's going to need more ground, but it seems to be that's the case. With the more ground they get, the better they're going to get. Right now, to me, the sire, as I've said before, to go with his Life is Good, because he has, again, wait for it, that greasy speed that and that his get should be very good at sprints, and they have been because of that. They're going to be Life is Goods are going to be really good sprinter milers. They should be, maybe a mile and an eighth. I don't know. They want to go much more than that, but we had a note. Somebody mentioned about the Pacific Classic. So let's take a look, because I just so happens I downloaded all the PPs, and they are out for Saratoga and Del Mar. So let's go down to and I'll put it up on the screen, and we'll take a little preliminary look. It's going to be a good day at Del Mar. We're going to have a couple of posts. Let's see. Okay, Pacific Classic. All right, I'm going to bring up. Yeah, I did too, and might be better long. I'm thinking perhaps. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I'm going to bring up Del Mar. This is the Pacific Classic. All right. So the first one we got to look at is Almond Joy. Positive record at Del Mar. So we like that. And is a 4-year-old coming in second off the layoff and had a pretty good, and is going against the boys. Three wide rally, too late. And one of the things I do see that I do always like to see is I see this horse has been getting steadily better. Had that Franz Valentine on the turf. Obviously, that's not her thing. But what to me would be a red flag is this right here. Average winning distance, 6 furlongs. And you see the sire is Ohm by Munnings. And as we know, Munnings don't get two-turn horses terribly often. Now you can look and you say, well, this one won the Santa Margarita at a mile and an eighth and just finished a good second in the Clement Hirsch. But you also, one of the big problems you have with a horse like Almond Joy is she's a closer at Del Mar. And you'll note that, you look at her wins and you see the 7 furlong Fleet Tree. That's a 7 furlong race is a race that it's good for closers. And the Torrey Pines. But you see the 113 race rating for the Fleet Tree, so that wasn't the greatest of fields. And 116 for a graded stakes is pretty weak. And once she stepped up, you see that March 7th at Santa Anita in the Beholder Mile. That was a really good race. That's a 120 race rating. She got a 119. So looking at that, and then you look at the grade 1 next after that was the Apple Blossom, and that was a 118. She ran okay, but not great. So her best effort is the Santa Margarita, which was a very good race at 118, and she had some pace because you had Simply Joking and Seismic Beauty in a field of four. I remember watching that race. So I downgrade it from a race like that. I don't consider that to be a really significant effort because it's a 4-horse field where you had two, front runners going at it. But the Clement Hirsch off the bench, not bad, but you see that too late. So Almond Joy would be one that I'd kind of, I wouldn't be real excited about Almond Joy in this race. If you get a price underneath, perhaps. We're going to go through them all, Mr. Hill. Don't worry about it. This is good. I wasn't sure what we were going to do tonight, so I had a feeling maybe this would be a good time to go over some of these races. But so right off the bat, that would be. I don't know. We have to watch the Clement Hirsch again. To me, this would be a race where I would say Almond Joy's probably up against it. The only thing I will say though is Kent DeSormo. I know he has all the personal issues and all that, but he is crafty as hell. And so if you get a good enough price, she's a horse I would want to think about for the exotics, if the price is right. All right, Forge Steel. Now, the whole question to me with Forge Steel is, what's the field? We know he's won at the distance before, but that Gold Cup was, it's listed as a 118, but that was a lousy field. So, and the Suburban, really he couldn't get the lead, and, Phileas Fogg took it, and look what happened. You notice Flavian Pratt didn't make the trip. The one thing I would say is he's fresh, and he was going to run in the Whitney, and he's going to run here instead, which makes perfect sense. And I looked at his work tab, and he's had 4 works. And, I think he'll be in shape. But the question is, of course, what's he going to run against here, and can he wire the field? So he looks, it's all about the field. In this race. Certainly a front runner you wouldn't want to exclude completely right off the bat because it's Del Mar. So there's Forge Steel. Then the Finger. Okay, then now a Japanese horse by Gunrunner. Now, before we get real excited, look at who the dam is. The dam is McLean's Music. So, Dam Cyrus. So, this horse is getting no stamina underneath. That's significant. Now, I'll bring something up as a comparison. For those of you who the class reservation. Oh, okay. Yes, Father Sean. I'll be happy to do that. Okay. Okay. That's okay. Sean just brought something up, so I'm going to go back to Almond Joy and see if I can explain this a little bit, and we'll keep going. Now, you guys have heard me talk a lot about class ratings and race ratings, and I'm going to expand Almond Joy to make it easier for you to see. Okay, and I'll highlight. Now you see, okay, we'll go from the bottom. Now do you see this race here? The one I'm highlighting here. See that evening jewel? Okay, there's two columns here. Race rating, class rating. See that? Now, the race rating is an indication of how good the field was, how good a race it was. And a lot of things can govern that qualification. Is how, if it's a lousy field, the horses aren't very good, the race rating is likely to be low, especially if there's a runaway winner, or it just means the race wasn't very good. So you look at this evening jewel. First of all, we know it was against state-bred fillies, Cal-bred fillies, and we know the stock in California generally isn't very good. So Almond Joy at 6.5 furlongs last year at 3, and you note it was a 3-year-old only race, and you know that because you don't see these here, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4. That's against older horses. That's what that means. So it was against her own kind, and she won, but it was a 112 race rating, and she got a 116. Now, by comparison, if you look at her later races, 117, 118, 118, 120. Now, when you run a 120, now you're getting into graded stakes level performance caliber. The highest I've ever seen, I believe, is like 125. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Magnitude got a 125 for winning the Stephen Foster. Don't hold me to that. A 125 is an like beyond like superstar level. Anything between 120 and like 123 is generally what a horse will run class rating wise to win a graded stakes race. When you see a low race rating, like a 112, and then you see Almond Joy won this race, but with only a 116, what that tells me is that's a race that, yes, she ran better than the competition, but not that much better. And what I mean by that is when you see some of these ridiculous maiden special weight races that we always see on the Derby Trail, how many times have you seen a horse like Nash? Remember him from a couple years ago? He blew that field away, won by 10 lengths, and he got like a 118 class rating. And a lot of people were excited. But the race rating, I think, was like 110. He didn't beat anything. Now, he did what a good horse is supposed to do. So when you see like a 118 as opposed to, you see some of these Saratoga maidens, when they come back and you see the race, they got a class rating of like 117 or 118. That's good. That means that they probably have a little bit more in the tank next time they run. But the problem is when, if you look at the race rating, you see 111, 112, 110, they're not beating a whole lot. 112 is like an average maiden race at Saratoga, which is pretty good. So that's how you do. Class rating, one of the things you want to see, and Almond Joy has this, is that her class ratings are getting progressively better. This is a horse who's improving. That's what class rating tells you. But the race rating tells you what kind of field is she getting that class rating against. Obviously, the better the race rating, corresponding to a better class rating, you got a horse is improving. I talk about it all the time on the Derby Trail. Race rating gets better. Class rating gets better at the same time. That's a horse who's improving you want to watch. If you see a class rating and a race rating that are equal, that horse just ran around the track with he or she is at the same caliber of horses she's running against. It doesn't tell you anything. Generally, what it means is this horse probably has hit the ceiling of what they can run against. Now, if you look at Almond Joy, what the concern to me would be this. So I see this Evening Jewel here, right? And I see the next start in the Mel Air. Look at that, a 114 race rating around 2 turns. So she moved from 1 turn to 2 turns. Got a 114. That's an improvement from the 112. So a better class of race. And she ran a 117. That's a better class race. So that, again, a horse on the improve. And we see that. Took a little break, goes to Del Mar, wins the Fleet Treat, 113. Not quite as good as the Mel Air, but the class rating was 118. Another step forward. And it's corresponding to the Brisnet numbers 85, 89, 93. So I hope that's clear. This is a horse who's getting progressively better at this point. But here's where the rubber starts meeting the road a little bit. Goes to the Torrey Pines at a mile at Del Mar, 2 turns again. So goes from sprint to route. And we know that works for her. It's been good. And she wins the Torrey Pines. But 116 race rating right here. Let me change the color and make it easier. Okay. So wins the Torrey Pines with a 116 race rating. See that? And gets a 118, another 118 class rating. So what does that tell you? This horse may, at this point, may have peaked. That's as good as she can run. That's what that tells you. Now, she did it against a better class of horses. That's true. It was a better race. But the class rating not taking that next jump, unless there was a troubled trip or something like that, that's a little bit of an indication that maybe she's gone as far as she can go, and grade 3s might be it. It's significant that she moved to graded stakes and won. But we look over at the notes here. Keen, 2 to 4, Path, 3 wide, 2 to 4 wide, Rally. Looked like she got a decent enough trip, right? So at this point, when I look at Almond Joy, I go, okay, if I stop right there, I wonder about the next step up. And look what happened. She goes to the Raven Run, again, route to sprint at Keeneland. Now, she's moved from the West Coast. That's very significant, right? 117 race rating. So that's the best competition she's ever run against at 3 years old. And she's still not running against older horses. So now she runs a 117. And look at this. She runs a 120. So she took another jump forward. That's good. That means that she's probably at graded stakes caliber, grade 2 caliber. It looks like a pretty good fit. And you look at her running lines. It looks like she may have had not the ideal trip. And you can see that because she was 4th, then faded, dropped back, and then re-rallied to get 4th. And if we look over at the running lines, inside, 5 path, upper, chased, out, kick. So she was to the inside, had to circle, probably lost a lot of ground. But if you like Almond Joy, that's a good race. I would say, okay, well, let's see what she does when they move her back. Now she goes back to Santa Anita around 2 turns and the Beholder Mile. Now look at that race rating. That's a 120, okay? That's an outstanding field. That's grade 1, Breeders' Cup level. When you see 120, that would be like Whitney level or from a couple weeks ago. And we see she runs a 119. Now we start to have some concerns because she didn't equal. This is the first race she ran below the race rating. I hope. Hi, Laura. I hope this is all making sense to everybody. Let me know if there's a problem. But I hope this is making sense. So I look at this and I go, she ran against the top level, grade 1. And look who's in the field. Splendora, Bless the Broken, who we know has improved. And she ran and also ran third. And from the start, you can kind of see she was fourth to begin, and then they sort of took her back a little bit, and she really just couldn't muster anything. Also, that's Splendor running away with it. And on a track that probably doesn't favor closers. So there's a couple of little bit of excuses, but the bottom line is she took a step back. So now, and you see an 83 after posting her career high to this point. So now they take her to Oaklawn, to the Apple Blossom, and look at the race rating is 118, and she runs a 118. Remember what I said about that. When you see that, that's a horse who perhaps has reached the zenith. That's the best she can do. And let's see what happens. She had a bad day. Had another trip where it looks like they tried to get her more forwardly placed, and they've been doing this for 3 starts, and it's not working. She's falling further back. So what that says is, to me, this is a horse who has to come from behind. They've been trying to get her more forwardly placed, and it isn't working. So this is a closer. We know this now. So now they put her on turf. Now that, to me, and you guys, and again, note also, the Beholder and the Apple Blossom, she was running against older horses for the first time at 4 years old. That's also an indication of maybe a horse at this point hasn't gone forward from 3. But to me, it's more likely the competition's a little too good. So they move her onto turf in the Franz Valentine, and that would be an indication to me that they're trying to move this horse into another category because 2 turns distaff isn't working. So let's try her on turf and see what she can do there. Not very much. So that's kind of a throwout race. We don't know what the motivation was for that. That could have been it, but you see the race rating was 115 and she ran a 112. That's awful. That's a really bad race, but it's turf, so forget it. So now we see she rebounds great in the Santa Margarita at a 118 race rating. Okay? And she runs a 120. Now, what was the difference? In these races here, look at those running lines. Kind of forwardly placed, and not very good. Skipped the turf race. What did they do with it this time? They took her back. Now the pace lines, and you could also see she had tons of pace to run to, 45, 109. Perfect setup for a closer, and she wins the race handily. And who'd she beat? And again, this is that 4-horse race, Simply Joking and Seismic Beauty. So we look at that and we say, if you just stopped at the running lines, you'd say great race. But then you note there were only 4 horses, and 2 of them were speedsters. Right? So that race really it was sort of ideal. So that's not going to tell us a whole lot. So now I want to see the Clement Hirsch off the bench, good, decent layoff. And she's done well at Del Mar before. We see a couple of wins. So the track she likes. And we see the pace was honest, and the race rating was 117, below the better races she's run against. And she gets a 120. That's a little bit of a red flag because She ran a 120, but they had to drop in class a little bit, even though it was a grade 1. The race rating was lower than the Santa Margarita. And we see they took her back, and she didn't have. And we look over at the running lines, and we see inside 3 wide rally, too late. So what I know from this is now is that all? Please tell me if anybody's confused about that. Did that make sense to everybody? You did. Okay, good. Right, Debbie. Exactly. That there was you throw a race like that out, and the reason you do is because it's a 4-horse field, lightning fast pace, neither of which are going to exist in this race more than likely. If we think the pace is going to be fast, we would certainly upgrade Almond Joy. But at this point, I would say that they're going to have to drop her back. Now, not having looked at the rest of the field, this is just what I'm thinking. They're going to have to drop her back, and she's a candidate to get into the exotics, the trifecta, or maybe even the exacta. But it's kind of a suck-up close. And don't forget, now she's running against the boys and stepping up in class. Ostensibly, we think. Is there any questions about what I was talking about? Did everybody get that? I want to make sure you get that. That's a really, really important concept, is race rating and class rating. You can use this with any race if you use Brisnet. And to me, it has a lot of import. It's very similar to the Thorograph. You can use it in the same way because it shows you patterns. And remember what I talk about, this oh, good, Debbie. Good. I'm glad, Laura. I'm glad that makes sense to you. Remember what I said about horses telling a story. So when you start from the bottom, this is how you see the progress and how horses are progressing coming into a race. And what we saw from this was Almond Joy probably is going to need some pace, and is probably going to have to come off the pace for her optimum effort. And if Forge Steele's in the race, I don't know that there's a guarantee. Unless there's some other front runner, Forge Steele probably won't be cranking it on the front end, I don't think. So Almond Joy's borderline to me. So we're done with Almond Joy. That makes everybody got it, I think. That's my opinion, of course. You can disagree with me, but okay. So now we'll take a look at Forge Steele. And we know Safi is 1 for 2 at Del Mar. Okay. But note right off the bat, he's got Edwin Gonzalez, who we know is a very good jockey with roots. And I knew this too. That's one thing about he's a good root jockey. And we also know Safi's used him. And he's used him 3 times. He's won once, and 2 out of were in the money. So there's a good relationship there. We also know what Forge Steele is going to do. There's no doubt about that, right? We know at this point this horse has to have the lead, and you know that because in the Suburban Handicap, he didn't get the lead, and he just sort of gave up. And you look at that running line, 1, 1.5, 3, 7, 12. When he couldn't get the lead, and then Billy Spog ran a monster. But and something that you want to note also, and this makes, I'm sure you guys do this already. Note this. Flavien Prat's not on him today. Obviously, that's a real big indication because obviously if they were really high on him, I bet you Flavien Prat would make the trip for the Pacific Classic, wouldn't you think? So, so I know that. And I also know this horse scratched out of the Whitney, which makes sense because this is likely to be a softer field, although we haven't looked at it yet. I don't know that yet, but I'm pretty sure. So now I also should say, you guys know how I do this. Forge Steel would be the first horse I would look at because he's an E. You know how we do E, E, P, P, and S? Well, I'm just doing it this way because it's a little easier. So what I know about Forge Steel, I look at the work tab. He hasn't missed a work. So he's had, I highlight guys. This is what I do. All right. So I look at his work tab and I see since July 4th, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4 works. That's okay. And they're all pretty good. So I know he's going to be in good shape. But I also know that this is likely, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm pretty sure this is a tougher field than perhaps, not as tough as the Whitney, but this would be a pretty tough field. And I know that his best race is the Hollywood Gold Cup. And I see field of 5, red flag, same as with Almond Joy, and he wired the field, and he won by 9.5 in a lousy race. Malarchuk, McVeigh, those horses are nowhere, right? So that's the best race he's ever run. And the thing you have to say is, you look at his pedigree being by Vekoma, and you see scorecard by Taylor the Cat, the average winning distance, 6.7 furlongs. So there's no stamina in here. Now they can outrun it, but the chances are he was able to get 1.25 miles because he was running against nothing. And he was able to dominate on the lead. Ran good fractions, 46, 111, 201. But it's the level of competition. Now you also see the race rating came back 118. I don't believe it. I'm going to say that right off the bat. And he ran a 123. He had never run anything close to that before. And you can see that by the difference in the Brisnet numbers here, 107 to 97. He's certainly a horse who seems to be improving. But you got to wonder about that a little bit. And we go back, he did run a 1.5 miles at the Temperance Hill, but look, the race rating was 117. He ran a 118. Again, you wonder about his potential. And I'll say right off the bat, that 123 is because he wasn't running against anything. I discount that race. I think the Suburban is probably a more realistic representation of what we're going to get from Forge Steel against a good field. But since he is a front runner, I'll reserve judgment until I look at the rest of the field and see what the race shape is. So now we take a look at Finger. Oh, thank you, Mr. Hill. Appreciate it. Now, okay. Now, all right. You know what? Let's add the suspense. Let's look at the whole field. All right. So I got Finger. We'll talk about him. Subsanador, Malarchuk, Original Sin, Dangerous here, Hit Show, British Isles, Navajo Warrior, Full Serrano, Knightsbridge. Okay, so there we go. Plenty of speed. Plenty of speed. So what I would say right off the bat is, to me, Forge Steel would be a toss because there's too much speed. He will not be able to get away. It doesn't matter, or it matters. But, I mean, in order for a horse, we talk about this all the time. You look at the race shape. You want to see a race shape that fits your horse, because a lot of times a horse you can love him, he's great and everything, but if the race shape doesn't fit, he's up against it. Ford Steele is a horse who's certainly, I think he's improving, but I'm not sold on him because he's running these better class ratings. He ran, the Gold Cup is an aberration because he ran against a no-deck field. Sorry, pardon the expression. And the Suburban, if he didn't have the lead, and I don't think he was going to win that race anyway. I think that was the race they took a chance to see what he's got at higher levels, and it didn't work out. So to me, more than likely, Ford Steele would be a toss. Would be my thought right off the bat. Got to see the rest of the field, or see how the shape is. Now let's look at Finger. Now, the first thing, we know he's Japanese. Now, when the Japanese have come over here on dirt, they've had mixed results. Forever Young's great, right? Derma Sotagaki's did pretty well in Breeders' Cup Classic, I think it was. But the thing about Japanese horses is, I still don't think they quite understand how to run over here. The trainers don't, because they seem to put the premium on speed. Like they train them. They train them to run these like super speedy races. Dan on Bourbon did okay this year, but I don't know. I'm just not sold on them. But if I look at Finger as a horse, that aside, I'll say he's by Gun Runner. I like that. But McLean's music bothers me. And here's a comparison from this year's 3-year-olds that should resonate with you guys right away. Chief Wallaby. Look at his pedigree. Average winning distance for the mare, for the dam sire, was like 6 point something. Didn't get any stamina. Not a 1.25 mile horse. Commandment, same thing. When you at the 1.25 mile at a classic distance, that's where it comes up. That's where it appears, where it becomes an issue, because they can get away with 1.16 to 1.125 on class, just on my favorite horse, Hardspun. He was not a 1.25 mile horse, but he was so classy that he could hang in there. So to me, right off the bat, this would be a bit of a red flag. Also, you've got a 3-year-old running against older. Let's not forget that 3-year-olds, how they run against their own kind, as opposed to how they run against older. That's a big, big step up. So that's 2 things right there that I'm wondering about with Finger. Now I look at this. Off track, 5 starts, 3 wins, 2 seconds on off tracks. 8 lifetime starts, 4 wins, 4 seconds. He's done most of his best running in the mud. And you can see good, muddy. So now, to his credit, he did win the Tokyo Derby. And let me see if I can find it. Okay. So we're a little treat for you guys. We're going to watch the Tokyo Derby, okay? So here we go. Can you, let's see. I'm gonna try to share it. It might be a little small, but no. Okay. All right. I hate that AI when they do that, but um, and you see how they do with the cameras. These are hard races to watch, but and you can see look at all that kickback. So there was plenty of and see pretty spread out. Man, and you can definitely see what a different kind of track they use over there as opposed to ours. Is he going to get there? Is he going to get there? Is he going to get there? Nope. All right. So there's the Tokyo Derby. You can't see it? Did I not? Okay. Well, there wasn't much to see. I'm sorry if you guys couldn't see it. He basically wired the field. The 16 horses, and to me, if I see that, that doesn't give me a lot of hope he's going to be competitive in this race. Because and mainly when you consider we go back to the PPs here, you see all his best running. He's won all of the 1,000,003 he's won. 1,117,600 was done on the slop. He is getting an 8-pound weight allowance, so that's good. So he's a wild card. I mean, if he tries to do that in this race, what does that mean? Now you've got Forge Steel, Navajo Warrior, and Finger all on the lead. That can't be good. We'll see what he looks like in the paddock. See what they say, but right now I would say he'd probably be a toss for me. All right, Subsenador. Thank you, Mr. Hill. I don't think he does either, Paul. It didn't look good to me at all. It is on YouTube. You guys want to watch it? I was able to pull it up pretty good. Just type in 2026 Tokyo Derby. All right, Subsenador. All right, Papa Mandela, the Belmont of the West, right? So we got to take him seriously. He's got Mike Smith in the irons, and we see the connections are Wathman Racing. They like to take chances. They're aggressive. And we see he's by Fortify and Save the Date by Hurricane Cat. Now look at the average winning distances, 8.5 and 9.3. This horse wants a mile and a quarter all day long. But we note he's 0 for 3 at a mile and a quarter. But we also note on dirt, 11 out of 17 times in the money with 9 wins. That's pretty good. He's a 7-year-old. So now we look at, and we know Papa, you don't almost even have to look at the percentages with Dick Mandella. If this horse is in the race, he's ready to roll. I wouldn't even worry about the Gold Cup or anything else. If he's in this race, he's ready to run. It's Dick Mandella. Whether he's good enough, that's the question. So we look at the work tab since May 25th, and we see he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 works, and a lot of stamina building, and culminating with a 58-4, first out of 42 bullet on the 13th. But we also know that prior to the Gold Cup, he had a bullet at 6 furlongs. He had a good 6. He had a similar work pattern, but I'm going to assume he's in good shape. He looks good. Okay, so we know we don't have to discount him because of his condition. And we know Big Money Mike. So we go back and now we look and we see that, he lost in a lousy Gold Cup in 2024. Mr. Fisk, who's not very good. But he comes back and wins the Iselin. And it was a 117, and he got a 122. So again, not the greatest of fields, but he ran a 122. So he's got some more in him. And look what happens in the Cal Crown. A 121 race rating, and he wins a 124. That's a monster. And he beat National Treasure and Newgate. 2 pretty good horses. Love National Treasure. I'm buying a hat of his, by the way. So you'll see that probably next week. Okay. But I also note that he took a full year off, more than a year off, like a year and a half after that race. Something went wrong. They bring him back into San Carlos, and he doesn't run well at all. Cornucopian, goes to Oaklawn, runs in the Lake Ochita, doesn't run well at all again. Stumble, broke in, bumped. All right, so he's had some gait issues since he's come back. And in the Gold Cup, obviously against Ford Steele, he was nowhere to be found at all. That's a horse in major league declining form, obviously, right? Now, the bigger issue is when you see an older horse, and at the time, Subsenator was 5, run a career high Brisnet number, which is the 107 here. You never want to expect that they're going to run that way again, because it just rarely happens. And what you've seen is, obviously, because there was a long time off, something went awry, and the last 3 efforts haven't been very good at all. And in fact, they're getting worse. So hard to, I would probably toss, even though it's Dick Mandella, because he's too unreliable. Yeah, you're right, Debbie. I think so. I think he's had his best days. But remember also, this is Wathman Racing. They were buying a lot of horses. They bought Hit Show. They bought a lot of horses, and they're very aggressive. So what I would say with Subsanador would be, this would be probably more their decision than Dick Mandella's, if I had to guess. And it's like, hey, Pacific Classic, Subsenator, we spent a lot of money on this horse. Let's run him. You never know, kind of thing. I would have to have him looking really good in the paddock, but he would probably be a toss. So right now, from the top 4, I'm not really seeing anybody who's really lighting me up. But let's take a look at Malarchik. Now, this horse ran in the Gold Cup, and all I have to do, I don't have to spend a lot of time on this horse to know that his best effort was probably here, or is here at Saratoga. Now, this is where I'm talking about with race rating and class rating. And at Saratoga last year, at a mile and an eighth in the mud, 117 race rating. He runs a 122. Okay. And he had Flavian Pratt aboard. Inside, swung 5 path, 1/4 bid, clear. Nice effort. And prior to that, he had run a really good one at Saratoga too. I didn't see that initially. So he's had two very solid efforts, but they were both at Saratoga. So if he goes back to Saratoga, I would bet him because he's, but you also note he was previously trained by Chad Brown. Remember, we've talked about that before. When you see these horses get claimed or change barns from a bigger barn, a lot of times it means, if they're willing to get rid of them, there's some chinks in the armor, let's say. So since then, they moved him to Sunland. He ran in the Sunland Park at a 116 race rating, and he runs a 120, but he didn't even win. Vodka beats him. And then he runs in the Gold Cup, and a 118 rated race, which I don't agree with. But he runs a 119, and he doesn't win, and he's way back. To me, you see a horse like this, the issue is class, in my opinion. Mike McCarthy's a nice trainer. And Umberto Rispoli's a nice jockey. So what I would say is there's some good trainer intent, it seems. And you see that when they hook up, they're 31%. But also look, the ROI is $1.40. So it's usually a horse who's really chalky. To me, he's just not good enough. I mean, I know the connections are nice and everything else, but the rest of his form outside of Saratoga doesn't compare to this. Probably be a toss. Yeah, you're right, Father Sean. It's so far it's pretty weak, isn't it? Yeah, you're right, Paul. Definitely. Yeah. So no, he's dressed up to look, like he's really well met. Now, the only thing I'm going to say is if we look at the rest of the field and we see some vulnerability on some of the more prominent horses, this is one maybe you think about for your exotics. That's the best, but that's the ceiling, I would say. Any other thoughts? Anybody got anything else? We're going to keep going. I just want to know if there's some disagreement, things we could talk about here. Okay, so let's move on. So I've got 5 horses right now I'm ready to toss, pretty much, exception of maybe Almond Joy and maybe Malarchuk. There's 2 maybes, and they're big maybes. So now let's look at Original Sin. Now this one, first of all, Brendan Walsh. So I like that. And he's got JJ aboard. Now, we see JJ is very good with roots, 27%. But I don't know that I consider him an elite jockey. I don't know how you guys feel about him. He doesn't put me over the top with a horse, let's just say, because he rides for Baffert most of the time. So there we go. So Original Sin, he ran in the Suburban, and nothing went right for him at all. And I look at his work tab since then, and I see 48 a minute, 48, 49, 48. Decent tab. Not going to knock him on the work tab. Looks okay. Probably going to rebound if it's Brendan Walsh. And we see Brendan Walsh, 46 to 90 days, 18%. Nothing wrong there. So now I want to. This is a horse I'm not real familiar with. So I want to read the story on this one. And I see he starts at Keeneland. Now, that's a good sign right off the bat as a 2-year-old, because there was some good intention there. They're not going to run him at Keeneland unless they think he's pretty good. And they even had Flavien Prat aboard him and Touchy, Mo Quality. So it's pretty good, and he was willing. You always like to see that. He was a step slow, first start. Okay. Stretch him out to 2 turns in the next start at Oaklawn in December. And he now the races are 111 rated. That's important because 3 maidens all rated 111. So they're basically all the same. So then you want to look at the class ratings, and you see 112, 112, 114. So while the race rating is staying the same, the class ratings are improving. So that's a pretty good sign. It's not a great one. And so when we get to that third start, we're running a mile in the slop. Now it's a 1-turn mile at Churchill, and he wins. But a 114 class rating with a win gives you a major league red flag, because that's not very good to win a race unless you're at a claiming, low level claiming or a low level allowance race. And even then, it's not very good. So they keep him at 1 turn at Churchill in November, and they step him up into an N1X, logical progression, much better race, a 113 race rating, and he gets a 117. Improving. Gets a third, but he's way coming from the clouds. So at this point, I'm like, okay, well, this is a horse who's getting better. Now he goes to Fairgrounds. They keep him in N1X, and he wins. In a 114 rated race, a better class of race, and he gets a 118. Now I'm interested, right? Because does everybody follow that? Because that's your progression that I always talk about, right here. Does everybody see that? Does everybody see that race rating, class rating thing? I want to make sure we all are really on board with this, because it's a very, very important concept. I'll blow it up a little bit so you can see it a little better. You see that down? See what I highlighted there? Now, at that point, if I look at Original Sin, now I see this horse is just maybe a slow learner, but he's got some talent because he's moving up the ladder. And most important, he's doing it against older horses as a 3-year-old. That's big. Remember Faithful Departed? That's how we got him, because he had won a turf race against older horses as a 3-year-old. Turned out to be pretty good. So something to think about. So I see that. Now so I move on. Now they move him to N2X Company, and it's a 116 rated race. So this is the highest class level he's ever faced, and he just doesn't fire. And we look over at the notes. He lost to Corporate Power and Conquest Warrior, who are in Tarantino. So they're okay, a lot higher level allowance, ungraded stakes horses, in my opinion. Trail, Advanced 4 Wide, Dual, Up. Oh, that's when he won. Oh, the next race is Jostled, Start, 5 to 6 wide, far turn. Okay, so he had some issues in that race. So we can forgive that a little bit. So let's look at his next race at Keeneland. And it's a 116 rated. And look what he does. He runs a monster, runs a 121 class rating. So obviously he had a bad trip. I wish I had bet him back. That's the perfect type of scenario to bet a horse back on. And he gets his career high 104, comes from behind. You look at the pace numbers. He didn't run much early. He had an 86, but then a 102 and a 102. Off slow, 5-path, second, rallied. So we know he does his best running coming from off the pace at this point. Now they take now that like they're looking, they go, okay, this horse is on his way. So let's put him into a graded stakes and see what he's got. So they put him in the Blame Stakes, and what does he do? Completely different running style, right? He goes to the lead. And I remember that race because it was confounding. What is he doing out there? Took advantage of it. Now we know he's handy. So that's another good thing to think about. And he beats Hit Show, who's in this race. Led 3/8, held foe in the stretch. Very solid race. So at this point, this is a horse who's on his way, right? He's looking pretty good. He's passed all the conditions. N1X, N2X, graded stakes, doing well. So let's see what happens to Suburban. He gets to the Suburban, and we see he doesn't do any running at all. 3 too wide, first turn, tired. Chances are, what I would say is that he really blew it all out in the Blame, and he just didn't follow it up with a good effort. And he was facing a much better field. Now, the Blame was a 119 race rating. The Suburban was a 120, and we know that was a very good race. And it was one on the front end, and he comes from behind generally. He had a lot of things against him. And you see the betting public didn't like him. He was 21-1. So I look at Original Sin, and I know you'll take 7-11. All right, Paul. Okay, what does Mr. Hill say here? He asks a question. Do you trust your eyes more than the ratings? They are human numbers, but I know it's a guide. Can you find underlays, or is the rating gospel? Well, it's like anything else, Mr. Hill. I mean, you have to – it's certainly a good determinant. I found it to be very accurate. When you know a horse is running against inferior opponents, inferior fields, and is beating up on them, and now moves up into major league company. Now, I mean, for the most part, unless you see other things to tell you that this horse is just a monster, chances are he's going to get humbled in his first time moving against old better. I think there were some issues with Original Sin. I think this is a horse who has talent. He's demonstrated it. You can see it in the running lines. I just don't know if he's ready to take that next step yet. A grade 1 from a grade 3 is a big step. But I do see enough here, and we know this horse can recover from bad races because he did it a couple back. He's one, and I think Brendan Walsh is a smart trainer. Yeah, but Debbie, this is the Pacific Classic. It's not the Whitney. Remember that. There are different grade 1s, aren't there? I don't think this is as good a field, certainly not as the Whitney. I mean, I think this is a grade 1. I think you have good horses in it. But, I mean, this is the kind, and more important, this horse may be ready to take a move forward. He's got the signs that he's ready to take a step forward. And if he is, now running from off the pace, that's going to be a problem, but he's going to have pace to run to. So of all the horses we've looked at so far, I'm going to use Original Sin. And plus, now I'm not a big fan of JJ's, but that does show some pretty good intent because he is good in California, as Sean points out. So I think this is a horse that you want to pay attention to, especially off the bench. And he's working fine. There's some things to like about Original Sin, I would say. Okay, Hit Show. We don't even have to look because this horse has been around long enough. We all know Hit Show, right? What I want to know is just what kind of form he's in. Because if he is in good form, then I know what he's going to do, right? So I look at his work tab since July 4th, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4 with a bullet, 5 works. And they're all breezing. So nobody's urging him. Nobody's pushing him to do it. And he's Brad Cox. And he's got flow back on him again, which I know, But one thing I would say for this race, particularly at Del Mar, Florin, as we know, can be a little aggressive. He may have this horse more forwardly placed, and that would be a good place for him to be. So that's positive in some respects. Okay, so I know he's in good form. So that's good enough for me. I know he can get a mile and a quarter. Now I want to see what kind of pattern do we have. Okay, so we'll go from the Dubai World Cup. He wins it. Comes back from Dubai. That's a reasonable excuse. Mind frame, Sierra Leone, first mission, pretty good field too. We know Hit Show, seemingly more of a grade 2, grade 3 horse. So that's why they sent him to the West Virginia Governors, whatever, because that's a race that he can win easily, and he did with Lasix. So now they step up to the Lucas Classic, and you see a 120 race rating. He runs a 120. Remember what I said about that? When they equal it, usually that means it's a ceiling. That's as far as they can go. So I look and I see the Fayette 119, not quite as good. He runs a monster, 123, and he gets his career high 105. It's his career high 105. So I know second off the layoff, and we know how consistent this horse is too. So we're not worried about that. I'm not worried about that. It's really more the class level that he's running at. So then he comes right back after the Fayette, a career high race at Keeneland, and he runs in the Clark, and he runs a good second to Magnitude. Moves to Fairgrounds, little layoff, wins the Mine Shaft. Goes to Dubai World Cup, not as lucky this time, much better field. Much better field. Those of you who saw the Dubai World Cup last year, much better field this year. So that's okay too, and he finishes 5th. So we're not going to worry about that. So now he goes back to the blame, and that's where Original Sin took command on the front end in a paceless race, and it was the right thing to do. Hit Show had major problems in that race. I remember it. I'm sure you guys do too. And he couldn't break free. And once he did, he had plenty of horse. But for the problems, he probably would have won that race. So now he goes to the Suburban. And again, Phileas Fogg runs away with it on a speed favoring track. He had no chance in because of the way he runs. And he still ran a very good second. No doubt about it. He's an absolute use. And he's a win candidate. Why? Because, again, what I've seen so far from this field, this is not a grade 1 field. It's probably more a grade 3. These are, it's name only type of thing. And we've been seeing that. The Pacific Classic last year was an allowance race. It was so bad. So he's a prime win candidate here. We know he's consistent. We know he fires every time. We know the track doesn't matter. Nothing matters to this horse. It's just a question of what kind of trip he gets. He's in good form. He's a use. I think we'd all agree on that. British Isles. I think this is a paper tiger myself as well. He won the Santa Anita handicap, won the big cap, and that's another race that was a grade one in name only. And look, there were only 5 horses in it. I don't need to know too much about the source. Now, the one thing you can say is he ran that big native diver at Del Mar last November, where Nevada Beach beat him out just barely. So he ran a big race at Del Mar. But we also look and we note he's 0 for 3. And here's the thing that's really important. Richie Baltas is ice cold, 137, 1 for 31. And who did he reach out for jockey? Diego Herrera. He's won with him before. He won the big cap with him. But you note the 2 starts after that, he went after Johnny Velasquez in the Ben Ali and then Joel Rosario in the Gold Cup. And he didn't get much out of him. I look at the work tab and I do see 4 consistent works. But I'm just not a big fan of this horse, especially with all the speed. And the barn's not going well. He'd probably be a toss. But he's an iffy horse for me. He's iffy because he's one of those horses that seems to be like he'll surprise you. But there's just not enough there for me to get excited about him. So how are we doing so far? Any disagreements? Anything? I'd say that's correct, Mr. Hill, about JJ. Now, you notice the only race we've watched so far is the Tokyo Derby. And about race replays, and Laura, I want you to think about this too. The reason we haven't watched them because we've seen a lot of these races before we know these horses. And because we've seen the races and we can recall them about the trips they had and things like that, it isn't necessary that we go back and watch it. Yes, that's right, Father. Exactly. Yeah, no doubt about it. He's a win candidate. So far, from what I've seen in this race so far, he's probably the prime win candidate. But I watch race replays when I can't recall how the horse did or I want to get a feel for what he's all about. But if you know the horse, you've seen him run a number of times, it isn't really necessary to go back and watch his races unless you really want to get some clarification on the trip and you think that might make a difference. So save yourself some time when you can. This is all I want to say about that. Okay, so British Isles, probably not. All right, Navajo Warrior. Now here's where the plot thickens a little bit. Look who the trainer is. Saffie Joseph. Who else is he training in this race? Ford Steele. What do they both like to do? Go to the lead. Now, as far as getting 1.25 miles, look at that pedigree. Candy Ride, Stormcat underneath. That's not going to be an issue. He's already won at the distance. And Micah Husbands is aboard, and he's a decent enough jockey. I'm not going to give him points off, and Saffie obviously uses him a lot, and he's won 30% of the time, 70% of the money. So I know all that going in. I know this is a 5-year-old who's been in the money 14 out of 18 times and 11 out of 15 on dirt, on fast track. And he's won at Del Mar. And I note this year he's 3 out of 4 and he was 7 for 8 last year. All that with a positive record, with a win at Del Mar. Interesting, right? Okay. Now he hasn't run since July 11th at Prairie Meadows. So we look and we'll talk about that. So since that race, he's had 2 works and he breezed both times. Okay. I would like to see 3, especially since it's the 20, but okay. It gives me a little question as to his fitness, a little bit. Not a big one, but a little bit. But let's look. Now, this is a horse we know a little bit about, but let's take a look. Santa Anita, two starts, both of them at a mile, and 2 wins. The race ratings were 115 and 114. Okay. Starter allowance, optional claimer. And we do see that he could rate. So we got to remember that. He doesn't necessarily have to have the lead. So that's important. Remember that. So now he goes to Saratoga in the Wilson Chute, 1 turn at optional claimer, 114 race rating, gets a 118. Doesn't run his best, but you also note he didn't do any running early. Look at the 76, 83, 100 to finish. And I'm blowing it up so you can see it a little better what I'm talking about. You see this right here. That can't be much of a race because he didn't do very much running at all early on. And you see the pace was pretty dawdling, 24 and 48, 113. Slow race. And he won it, but we're not going to give him any points. And you see he was bumped hard at the break. Okay? But this is a horse who likes to win. We like that. So now he goes to Churchill Downs, runs an allowance race rated also 114, and he doesn't run as well as he did in the optional claimer, but he gets another win. And we also note, the pace here was honest, but he rated. See that? So we know this horse doesn't need the lead. This is very important. Now when you consider Forge Steel is in the race for Saffie Joseph, maybe there's going to be some tactical stuff here. Now we know that Irad ran him 2 times in a row, and he got a win in the N1X allowance, but they go to a starter allowance. Now that's a 116 race rating. He runs a 118, but doesn't do a whole lot. So now we got to question a little bit. 2 wide, altered out at the 8th bowl. So maybe the trip wasn't the greatest. But the point is that that's the toughest race he's ever run in. And you see this right here, the 72. So he had to run a little quicker, 98, 106, and he had nothing in the tank left. So there was a little bit of problem there. Maybe he had to catch up, and he flattened out late. So, all right, draw a line. We go to Oaklawn, another starter allowance, 115, slightly, a little bit of class relief, and he runs a 120. So in a race that's not as good, he runs a better race. But let's give him a little bit of credit because he ran his career best class rating. So he's shaken off the bad start, and he's back to his winning ways. He goes to Oaklawn again after a little freshening in the slop. Doesn't do too well. Maybe he doesn't like the slop. Could be that simple. 3 to 5 path, bid, 5/16 held show. Okay. Slop. Nothing big. But now he gets his biggest test at Gulfstream at a 117 race rating and an optional claimer, 125 non-winners of 3 lifetime, and he runs a 120. And he gets his career high Brisnet number. Second off the layoff. Again, important to note. We'll see why in a second. And he rates, and he takes it. He beats Gosgar, who's not a bad horse, as we know. But it was only a 4-horse field. So, 4-horse field, as we know, we talked about, So, not points off for that. So, he goes to Laurel, Preakness Day, Pimlico Special. Mile and 3/16 wires the field with Flavian Pratt aboard. Okay. He likes to win. We know that. So now he goes to the Cornhusker, a 118 rated race. I might question that a little bit. Bullard's a pretty good horse. Gigante's a pretty good horse, but I question that. But he runs a 122. And he did what a good horse is supposed to do. He got out in front, wired the field, never looked back. Fractions were pretty decent too. Now, why is that important? To me, what that says is this is a horse with talent, and we know that because he's won quite a bit. He's won 2 Grade 3 stakes races, so he's passed that test that he can win a graded stakes. They may not be the greatest of fields, but he won. But here's what I like. He's winning on the front end when he hasn't won any other race on the front end. And I think the reason for that is he was just so much better than the rest of the horses in the field. They put him on the lead and said, why run the risk? And let's just walk the dog and beat this field. So that's a positive to me for Navajo Warrior. But and I see some good comments here, which we're going to address. Let me explain that, Debbie. It can mean that. It can. A lot of times when you see that, it means he potentially has reached his ceiling unless there was an explanation for it, like a bad trip, the mud, something. And in his case, obviously, there was something, there was an explanation for it. So he was able to advance past it. You got to use your judgment on that. It's not an automatic. It's just a little thing. When you see that, it can be a telltale. That's all I'm saying about that. Jamie makes a very good point. No big jockeys making the trip tells you all you need to know. Yeah, I think that's very fair. Okay, let's see. In a race like this, I picked the horse who has faced the better competition, which to me is Nightbreed. That's very fair, Jeannie. Very fair indeed. But what I wanted to say about Navajo Warrior is this is a horse I wouldn't throw out. Now, I know I've told you guys that when you see a horse that's had it his own way, that when they step up in class, it can be an issue. And you're absolutely right. But this is a horse who's handy, and I think he was running that way because he could. And that tells me that maybe they think there's a little bit more in the tank with this one. Why did Micah Husbands come out from Gulfstream where he rides all the time? So to me, I think this horse is interesting. And this is not a grade 1. It's a grade 1 in name only. I'm going to use Navajo Warrior for the reasons stated. Now, let's go. Let's see. Full Serrano. Okay. First thing I like, 3 for 5 at Del Mar. What I don't like is, see that here, average winning distance is negligible. John Sadler, Joel Rosario, Haranas Racing. We know Joel does 2 things well, right? He either takes him all the way, wires, or he takes him from behind. Neither. He doesn't do one of those. It's up in the air, right? He's been doing pretty well at Del Mar recently. I think he got 3 wins yesterday. But we got to face reality here. I like this horse. I've liked him for a while. I thought he was going to win the Pacific Classic 2 years ago, and how Mixto beat him, I don't know, but that was another race that wasn't the greatest. Anyway, we know this horse. We know he likes to be on the front end, and if we look at his last 3 starts, we note he has not been able to get the lead in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile or the Pegasus. Pegasus, I thought he had a good shot in that race because there wasn't any speed per se. What the most troubling is the Oaklawn Mile. Because, Debbie, there it is. You want to see 118. This is a horse who has run better in the past, and now the best he can do is run with the competition. After a layoff at 7 years old, that's when it's a telltale. And if you note, this horse has had 3 starts in a row of below par, what's good for him, what his best numbers are. This is probably a horse who's, I would say, is probably headed on the way down. They've taken some extra time with him. Now we look at the work tab, and we see, even though he's been off since March, he had a work in April, and then they didn't have another one until June. That's a little bit of a red flag. But then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 works uninterrupted. So what you could say from this is that John Sadler's pointing to this race. But with all the other speed in this race, I think it's going to be a tall order for Full Serrano. So I probably would let him go. So let's see. Knightsbridge in great form. Let's see. I'm just going to get to that. Knightsbridge in great form. He also bested Journal. That's true. We're going to talk about him in just a second. I would tend to agree with you, Robert. But there's different kind of class, isn't there? Okay. Now let's talk about Knightsbridge. And I think this is going to be very interesting. Okay. First of all, Godolphin. They like to win these races, right? Bill Mott. You guys know my feelings on Bill Mott. O for Del Mar. O for the distance. Okay. Now, he's by Nyquist with a Bernardini mare dam underneath. By his pedigree, it shouldn't be a problem. More importantly, as Robert alluded to, this is a drop-in class. This is not a grade 1 race. If this was a grade 1 mile-and-a-quarter race, I would wonder about Knightsbridge. And I'll tell you why. When you see a horse who's bred like that, who's been running consistently on one-turn races, there's an issue there. Now, I'll give you a couple examples. Some of you may remember Midnight Loot. Midnight Loot for Bob Baffert had 2-turn pedigree. The reason he only ran at 1 turn, bad ankles. Couldn't keep him healthy if he ran around 2 turns. They tried after he had won the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and it didn't work out. He physically just had problems that limited his ability to go more than 1 turn. I'm not saying that's the case with Knightsbridge. The other example is Elite Power. Bill Mott, Breeders' Cup Sprint champion. I think the reason Elite Power was so good at sprints is because he had two-turn pedigree, which means so he had the stamina to win sprints because he could outlast the other horses, but he didn't do it around two turns. I don't think he ever did. And I don't know why. I can't say. But when you see that, it's a little bit of a wonder. So that's something that I keep in the back of my mind when I look at a horse like Knightsbridge. Now, can I argue with his record? Absolutely not. He's, 10 out of 11 times in the money. Okay, so now before I want to look at his work tab. So he ran on July 18th at Monmouth. And since then, he's had 3 works. I like that. And they look pretty good. More importantly, you don't see Bill Mott horses run a 59 for 5 furlongs. Or a minute, for that matter, that often. So I like that. So I think he should be in good shape for this race. So now I want to look at, and I see, we'll start from the Perryville, and I see he finished 3rd. And then he goes to a 1-turn mile at Gulfstream, finishes 2nd. We know he had some issues too. But now he's Aqueduct, goes an optional claimer. Bill Mott tested him out, wins for fun. Gulfstream runs into Mr. Prospector, wins for fun. Goes to the Fred Hooper, wins that one for fun. Now he's at the Gulfstream Park Mile, and he blows the field away. All at Gulfstream, and we look at the race ratings, progressively increasing, and his class rating is getting progressively better. So prior to Gulfstream, I'm just going to expand it to make it easier for you guys. So prior to Gulfstream, February, remember everybody was all over this horse, right? He's awesome. He's unbelievable. All around 1 turn. Goes to the Churchill Downs. Now, a 119 race rating, highest class race rating he's ever faced. And he runs a 120. And he finishes 6th. He fades late. And that was that T.O. Elvis race where he just blew the field away, right? But that was a pretty good field. Disruptor, Crazy Mason. And he just ran into a monster that day. So we can be a little forgiving. We also note he still ran a 120, even though it was a 119. So I wouldn't say at that point he was necessarily outclassed. That's what that would tell me. So we move on to the Met Mile. And we see his toughest race to date, 121. That's Major League Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Stakes level. And he runs a 123. That's a monster race that 9 times out of 10 would win. And he finishes 2nd to Nysos and journalism. And it's a key race, right? Not bad. Not going to knock him for that. Okay, so at that point, I'm thinking, okay, well, he's proven that he can run with better fields. I know that. So class isn't the issue. So now it looks to me like after that effort, Bill Mott said, well, we've proven ourselves. We've won some graded stakes. We've proven ourselves at the grade 1 level. And there may not be anything for us to run in until, the Breeders' Cup or the Cigar Mile. What the hell? Let's try him at 2 turns and see how he does. And if you recall, he did this with Cody's Wish in the Whitney in 2024 or 23. Because he was like, the 1 turn, we got that. He can win at 1 turn mile all day long. So let's try him at 2 turns, and if he's good enough, we'll put him in the Classic. And what happened? Didn't run well because he's not a 2-turn horse. I've had arguments with people about that. They say he was washy. Fair enough, but hey, facts are facts. So he runs him in the Monmouth Cup. Now, you would have to believe this was not the race they were pointing to. This is a test because, again, he wouldn't have a race, probably a mile race or a sprint or anything for a little while. So they're like, let's try him out here. Gets Flavien Prat aboard, and he blows the field away. Skippy Longstocking's in that race. Money Game's not a bad horse. But he blew the field away. He gets a 1, and it was a 119 race rating. He gets a 125. Highest class rating he's ever got. That is a monster number. And you can see that by the pace numbers. 116, 126, 107. Never a doubt. In the lead. Goodbye. Winning for fun. And one other thing that's really important to note. May 2nd, June 6th, July 18th. Third race in the cycle. 97, 101, 119. So, that's a peak effort. Does anybody so the Pacific Classic, this is a new form cycle. And I don't think Bill Mott was pointing to this race. I think the Monmouth Cup was a test to see how he'd do around 2 turns. He passed, obviously. Could be, Sean. I'm not saying, no, first of all I'm trying to point out is something that is overlooked sometimes. This is not a grade 1 field. I think we'll all agree there. So it's a very favorable spot for Knightsbridge to run in. But I sit there and I say, it's a new form cycle. He's going around 2 turns, which they have taken their sweet time getting him around. Can he beat this field? Yes. Should he beat this field? Yes. But he's never run a 1.25 miles before. And remember what Harvey Peck says, never bet on a horse who's doing something for the first time. There's enough question to me that I would I'll just say right off the bat, I'm going to use him. But also remember this, look where he is. He's in the 11 hole. He's marooned out there, and this is a horse who's, I won't say he's questionable at 2 turns. That's a little unkind, but you got to wonder about it a little bit. The other thing, I mean, there's enough here that the way I would posit this race, I would say, do you pick Knightsbridge to win this race? Yes. But could you look for alternatives and feel good about it? Yeah, I think you can. I think Hit Show makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. He's a 2-turn horse. He's consistent as all hell. He's not going to be bothered by anything at Del Mar. Anything in this race is going to bother him. There's pace to run to. you know. And Knightsbridge is going to get hammered at the windows. Could he still win the race? Yes. But am I 100%? No. I'd say I'm 90%. And that 10% is enough for me that I'm going to use him. I'm going to use him as a win. He will be a win candidate on my tickets. But if I look at this race, and don't forget, he's coming off an effort that was extremely easy. He obviously wasn't challenged in the slightest in that race. So I'm going to use the 11, the 9, the 7, the 6, and that's it. And maybe the 1. So don't forget the 11 is very dangerous too. Yeah, you get it before the video post. I'm going to try to beat him. I think there's enough. Anybody else? Very good point, Robert. Excellent point. Because I was going to mention it because Junior right now seems to be riding every horse the same. I don't want to say he was going to win the Jim Dandy with Chief Wallaby, but he keeps riding that horse the same way. And I just kind of noticed that about him. I mean, Knightsbridge, I think the horse rode it, he probably rides himself most of the time, but he always seems to keep him. You always wonder, why do you take a horse like Knightsbridge and have him in the mid-pack? Why isn't he up amongst the leaders with the kind of speed he has? That's another part of it. I mean, okay, Debbie. Oh, wait, you sure that's not 11-7-9? Debbie, that you're not taking Almond Joy to win, are you? And leaving Knightsbridge off? I am leaning Navajo for my win. Knightsbridge outside is enough to give me pause. All right, Debbie. Debbie likes the 1. Okay. I could see getting into the money. That's not to win that. Okay. Yeah. It's now that we've seen the whole field, Almond Joy has a little bit more appeal to me. But the 2, I think Original Sin is very dangerous in this spot. If Knightsbridge, if the 11 posts and he becomes mortal at 1.25 miles, I think I like Hit Show, but I think Original Sin is really dangerous. Navajo Warrior might surprise too. It's maybe, I'll call it a grade 2, not a grade 3. I'll call it more grade 2 caliber type of race. But what's really kind of unique, what's interesting is having Forge Steel and Navajo Warrior. I don't think Navajo Warrior is going to go to lead. I think Forge Steel will. And I don't think he can outlast this field. I want to be clear about that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think if Knightsbridge was in the 2 hole where he could save a lot of ground and be up amongst the leaders, no problem, he'd be a very good bet. But in the 11 hole, Perhaps, Father, but it may be against my better judgment to be high on him. But let's see. Junior has always gotten KB to the front. I'd be shocked if he didn't keep him within 3 to 4 of the lead. Well, that's true, but just in the 11th hole, that's a really tall order. Don't forget how small a track Del Mar is. It's tight. That's why early speed has such an advantage. It's a small, tight track, and it's you're asking an awful lot. And just, I mean, he's going to have to be used early, and I got at 1.25 miles, it's a and running a 119 Brisnet number, which is so much better than anything else he had ever run before. There's a lot. I mean, it's a trickier race than it looks. It really is. I think you've got some real sleepers. That Navajo Warriors is, I just, how he runs. If he goes back to his old form of running from off the pace, then the question is class. And is he in Hit Show's class? I don't think so. And I don't think he's in Knightsbridge's class. But under the right scenario, but I think it looks awful good for Hit Show, in my opinion. That's what I see so far. Oh, good. Well, good. Oh, thank you, Debbie. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of what to do tonight. I mean, and it was all contingent upon whether I could get the past performances, and I think it's a very, very intriguing race. It's not going to surprise me at all if there's an upset. And to me, Hit Show looks like the best bet. I've been wrong before. We're going to have we'll have an individual post. Not that you guys need it now, but I'll be putting it all on paper, and the Del Mar Mile, and we'll probably have the pick 5 for Del Mar, I'm guessing, and it's Alabama weekend at Saratoga too, so we'll have that, and the full card will be available. We did okay last week with this last Saturday with the scratches and the mud and all that, but we've been doing pretty well at Saratoga so far. I may take a bite of the. See what you've done, Father Sean? You've given impure thoughts to these people. I would like you to think about a wagering and ticket structure session. Okay, Jamie, we can do that. I will say this. As I've said before, I consider myself to be more of a handicapper than a bettor. And I think the ticket structures I give you are reasonable. We can do it. We can talk about it. I will say that, I mean, the one thing is that I encourage everybody to be seriously thinking about is to get away from key boxing. The ROI will kill you. The takeout will kill you. I mean, it just using, it's not important. I mean, everybody wants to win and say, hey, I had a winner here. I hit the exacta and whatnot. But be firmer with your opinion. Have more confidence. Have confidence that you can stick with your opinion and go with it. So if you like a horse, go with it. And if it hits, great. If it doesn't, so be it. And then leverage Dutch accordingly. And that'll be a better bet. You'll make more money than you will with key boxing because you won't get killed on the takeout. But I hope everybody enjoyed this. I mean, this is something we hadn't done before. The only thing is because it's Sunday, we don't have the past performances to go over these races. But and did you get? And I don't mean to pick on you, Laura, but did you get that about race replays and like when to watch them and when not to? And I thought that was a really important thing. That it isn't necessary to watch every single race. If you know a horse and you know what he can do, and if you can look at his past performances and work tab and everything looks good, that should be enough. And then it's a question of race shape and all the other good stuff we talk about. But I know guys who watch every single race a horse ever ran, and if they have the time to do it, so be it. But it sometimes it's overkill. Younger horses, I could see it. Horses only had 3 or 4 starts. I did it for the Derby this year, you guys know, and it was helpful to me. But you go. Oh, okay. Yeah, I did pull up the Tokyo Derby. Apparently, nobody could see it, so I'm sorry about that. But to suffice it to say, for Finger, the Japanese horse, he wired the field, and I have to believe it probably wasn't the greatest of fields, and it was in the mud. And he has of his 4 wins, I think it is, he's had 3 of them in the mud or on off tracks. So he's not going to have that at Del Seems like a bit of a reach, but and I'm only going to consider him if he's like 50-1. I couldn't do any more with him than that. But well, do we have any other questions? Anything else, guys? I thought this was fun. I'm glad we could do this. I'll tell you something I've got in brewing that I want to do with us. I can invite a bunch of people. I think I can. I think I can get more than, well, maybe I'd like to have one of you guys on and we throw up a past performance and we just go over it and with a race or a race card, something like that. It was just something I have something I have in mind. I also should tell you, I intend to reach out to Scott for the Travers, and hopefully he'll have enough time for his pace analysis before the Travers. So the Sunday before we're going to try to do that. And perhaps because it's Travers Day and Sean's going to be there, I'm going to be there. I thought maybe we could have some kind of a mutual ticket, perhaps, because it should be an all stakes pick 5. So and we'll get the Worm involved. We'll get Jamie involved with this for sure, using his app, and we can put it all together. But we got some other ideas, some other things as always that we're looking at. So anyway, any other questions? Anything else before we call it? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay. Here's a few things that I was pointing out were still new to me. Oh, good. Well, Jeannie, that's what we try to do. That's very big. If you have any other friends who are trying to learn about handicapping, I hope I can help with that. And that's really a big thrust of what we do at Right at the Wire is try to educate. Um, and hopefully the more you do it, the more it's going to become second nature to you. And I thought, I've wanted to do this for a while, just go over a race with you guys. And like I said, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it helps you. The only thing that always bothers me is that the print is a little small in the PP, so I try to expand it so you can see a little better. But maybe let's do. Why don't we try to do this? Thank you, Nina. Why don't we try to do this for the Travers? So this will be next Sunday night. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it. Um, why don't we all get the Brisnet past performances and we'll all go over it together? How about that? We can do it all right here. And, you can come with questions or we'll go through the Travers field just like we did for the Pacific Classic. And then we can talk ticket. We'll talk structure and all that other good stuff. And listen, if you look at the card for the Travers and you see something else that you want us to look at, you guys have questions about a particular race, we'll pull it all up right here, and we'll go over it. At least you'll have my opinion, and not that it's the great one, but not the best one, but it's mine. Needless to say. So you guys got a little primer for the post. I don't even feel like I have to do a post now for the Pacific Classic, but of course, I will. So there'll be plenty of stuff. We didn't have any last week, so there'll be plenty of posts this week. We've got 2 or 3 from Del Mar, 2 or 3 from Saratoga, and then we'll have probably going to do a pick 5 for Del Mar, and the full card will be available at rightatthewire.com for Saratoga, and we'll have perhaps we'll have a guest next week. I want to get Kaylee and talk about visual handicapping if I can get her. But, some of you guys on X know Marty Shapiro too. And he's a great guy. I was just talking with him today. And he's in sales, thoroughbred sales. So that might be cool to get a different perspective. So just to let you know a couple ideas I'm having. But to have to explain. That's right, Laura. That's absolutely. It's something there's not enough of. Like if you watch the Daily Racing Form, you watch Mike Beer and David Aragona, you can tell that they make their case, but it's not adversarial. So that's the way I like to be with this. I mean, it's not, I want people to be very comfortable. If you disagree with me, that's fine. But you're right. What will help you is if you have to steel your resolve a little bit, or you have to explain it and say, hey, this is why I like this horse. We had Debbie and Joe on. She was great at pointing that out. Like, this is how she comes to her conclusion. And the good news is, if you're right, you did it right. And if you're wrong, at least you can learn from it. And maybe you'll see something that you didn't see before. But that's what we want to do here. I want everybody to feel never to be shy about, if you don't agree, you say so. And now, I reserve the right to put you on the hot seat and ask why. and it should help you if you have to explain it a little bit. But it's not meant to put anybody in the hot seat, or, we try to be. But do I know those guys, Laura? I do not know them. I don't know David or Mike Beer. I've seen them at Saratoga many times. Never had a chance to talk to them. The guys I know are, I know Matthew, I know Kaylee, I know all the racing dudes. I know all those guys, Colin and Vinny from Dublin Down. Trust the Profits. You've met Tim Carson and Tom and Brian, and all those guys. And of course, Gio. And I know John Stetton. I have never met him physically, but I've talked with him many times. I feel like I know him pretty well. But those are the people I know. I always meet somebody new every year. You never know. But I'm sure when I have Father Sean at Saratoga, all kinds of doors will open up for us. So, but okay, well, that's. I think we're going to call it at this point. And again, thank you very much for all your support. Thank you, guys are great. I love this. I can't tell you how much I enjoy this. I feel like we're a family now, and that's exactly what I want. I want this community to feel like we're just, coffee and cake and just talking about the races. And so, again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And that's it from here. I'll talk to you soon. And until then, be well.